Hey folks, Eric from Hit Subscribe here, and I am doing yet another installment of the Freelancer Q&A series that I've been doing for actually a pretty long time now. This is going to be the last version of this that happens in this particular place where we are in Quincy, Massachusetts. We are going to be hitting the road over the next few weeks, so these might get a little spottier. This is all assuming I post them in any coherent order on YouTube, which always isn't always a given. But for the streaming folks that may be consuming this content, it's the last time I will be here. Anyway, my personal travel schedule aside, let's dive into the subject of today's question, which is coaching a good line of work for an independent? That is the sum total of the question. So the idea here is, is the idea of being some kind of coach a good line of work to go into? And I think we're talking, probably largely in the technical space, but I can answer this question broadly. Speaking about the business to business, B2B space, I will, not to bury the lead here, is it a good line of work for an independent? It can be, sure. I think you can earn a nice living and help people a lot as some sort of coach, but I also think here be dragons. And I'll walk through why I say that in the course of this video. There's some nuance here. So first of all, let's maybe talk about what it means to be a coach in a professional context and, B2B versus, I guess, B2C. A coach I think of as somebody who specifically probably one-on-one or like one to not that many, there has to be personal interaction. Otherwise you're a content creator. You are helping one or a handful of people get better at something. So it is different from consulting in the sense that a consultant, and I've talked about this before, I'll try to link a video on YouTube. A consultant versus like a contractor is somebody who you pay to come in and furnish expertise. A consultant kind of like sizes up a situation and tells you what to do. A coach, on the other hand, would come in and help you get better at something. So for instance, you might hire a consultant to come in and give you like a roadmap for how to stand up a website and get going with like content and landing pages and stuff. They would tell you what to do. A coach would come in and help you get better at standing up websites and building landing pages. So that's not a great use case for a coach. People will often hire coaches to work with a team on, improving some set of skills, or often you will see leadership at organizations maybe hire coaches to help them do things like getting better at speaking or getting better at sales or what have you. And I might get into an example there in a moment, but that is consulting versus coaching. I also think of it as subtly different than training. So if you're doing training, usually that is more specific in the thing that you're learning to do. So the charter of a trainer might be, I am going to help you come in, or I'm going to come in as a trainer and teach you how to do stuff with, say, Salesforce or HubSpot as a CRM. A coach, on the other hand, would come in and help you be better at being a salesperson. So coaching is about a general skill development, generalized improvement that may be more contextual or situational, and training is more, I will help you get good at this specific thing. So that's kind of where coaching lies in the world of generally B2B. It's probably similar in B2C as well, but, and I'll get into this here in a bit too, in the B2C world, I'm pretty skeptical of coaching. In the B2B world, if you are a new executive, you're a new CFO or something, maybe you're getting training in how to be better at presiding over the financial arm of a business. In a business-to-business context, usually there is less opportunity to be a huckster. Usually there's more kind of value there. So let me get into that in a bit, but this is to define coaching. It isn't quite the same thing as training. It's kind of different than consulting, and even with less nuance than versus training. And it's certainly different than like doing labor of any kind. So it is, you could almost consider it a subset of consulting in the sense that, you are paying a coach to tell you what to do. But a consultant is going to come in and tell you how to achieve some kind of outcome. They're going to give you a roadmap to do something. A coach is going to come in and teach you to be a better you. So hopefully that makes sense in defining the problem. So with that definition in mind, the question is coaching a good line of work for an independent? And so explained that way, the answer might be like, sure, it's good work if you can get it. And I kind of want to walk through, I guess, when I say here be dragons, why I think here be dragons. So maybe, and sorry for the disorganization here, I don't have like carefully defined notes, but now that I think about it, it might be best if I sort of dumped my bucket on my own personal experience with coaching, because I think that would potentially color what I'm telling you here. And that personal experience is quite limited. I have never, at least on purpose, hired a coach to help me with anything. And I've only ever, in pretty limited capacity, done anything that could be construed as coaching. I've certainly done a kind of never ending background of consulting over the years. I am by trade and have long been a consultant, not really a coach. The exception to that on the coaching side was shortly after my last salaried role, when I was the CIO for a company. I went independent and I did a stint as, I think, what was billed as a craftsmanship coach. So I went actually to Ford and was doing some subcontract work there. And what I was doing was working with teams and kind of going in and teaching those teams to do things related to agile software development, certain practices. For those of you that are techies watching, like teaching continuous integration, test-driven development, the principles that were generally associated with the extreme programming methodology. So I was there to generally help the engineers on those teams get better at those things, pair programming, etc. That was coaching. It's kind of my limited experience as coaching in the world of developers. It was much more common for me to come in and consult with organizational leadership and offer advice. So that's kind of my limited experience with coaching. It was a lot of fun. It was lucrative. I actually thought of it in retrospect, especially after having been a CIO. It was like all the fun things about leadership, kind of like mentoring and teaching, with none of the unfun things about leadership, like HR type stuff and listening to people complain. Anyway, so I could go down a rabbit hole there. But anyway, it was fun. It was good work. So my experience as a coach, however limited, was pretty positive. The only time I can think of that I ever hired a coach was by accident. I actually hired a consultant to come in and help hit subscribe, hire for sales. So this was, I don't know, 2 or 3 years ago. We paid a consultant, and the idea was that this consultant would come in, kind of take stock of the situation and help us execute the hiring of a salesperson. This was inadvertent coaching, because what actually happened was the consultant was, backlogged and probably overcommitted. So he never actually delivered on that deliverable of, when I'm done, you will have a salesperson working for you. But what inadvertently happened was he, as just kind of a throw-in, gave us access to his like sales coaching and training repertoire, if you will. And in the end, even though this engagement went a little bit sideways, I don't know, we paid like $10K for it or something, but he wound up over delivering on the value from the coaching. So basically what happened is the information he had in teaching, me in particular, I was consuming this content and I was doing our sales at the time. I took away a few lessons in particular that were absolute game changers in terms of how we were running our sales process and conducting sales calls and presentations. And that alone, even though the outcome was completely not what I wanted, it wound up being worth it. So I got some inadvertent coaching when the actual scope of the arrangement was supposed to be consulting. And it all worked out in the end. We did hire, we have Cherry doing sales, and that's been great. So, all's well that ends well, but I inadvertently hired coaching and it went pretty well. So I guess maybe I should do it more. I personally have always been kind of my own crash test dummy and figuring things out, just blasting my way through by sheer stubbornness and force of will. So I am not really a typical consumer of coaching. I think other organizational leaders, perhaps wiser ones than myself, are big proponents of coaching. If you know you're not good at something that you need to be good at, and you get somebody to come in and help you be good at that thing, that can be a pretty high leverage spend. But I'm just stubborn and it's not really my thing. So all of this is to say that my advice on coaching is coming to you through this filter of I don't have a lot of experience with it on either side of the aisle. So understand that as you are listening to my take on it. I have watched and talked to other organizational leaders consume coaching and have a lot of good luck with it. So I see the upsides. I also see some of the downsides, especially in terms of how you might be perceived if you go into coaching. But I am not an expert in either side of the aisle. So let me talk through, I guess, why I would say you might want to be careful of positioning yourself as a coach. And then after that, I'll kind of get through what I would view as the, prerequisites, I guess, for success, if you will. So like, should you do it? The answer would be, yeah, maybe, but here are some things I would make sure are true first. So in terms of the here be dragons angle, coaching is potentially an extremely high leverage thing. Like if you get a gig where you're, teaching CFOs to do something or teaching CEOs to do something, what you have got is you are now plugged in to executive buyers that have a lot of money to bring to bear. And they, if they come to trust you, will probably engage you over and over again, refer you out over and over again. This is a venue, if you're doing especially executive coaching, it is a venue for you to recreate Alan Weiss's idea of $1 million consulting. As a coach to executives, it is entirely possible for you to build a 7+ figure business that you execute by yourself as an independent. So there is enormous upside. That said, if you look at the gamut of people that call themselves a coach, there is absolutely rampant hucksterism that goes on under that title. So I have at times gotten into consuming content about multi-level marketing, MLMs. I just find that whole scam to be entirely fascinating. Like it's like a car wreck for me. So when I consume content on YouTube, there's these anti-MLM channels. It's just such a world that I was never in any way exposed to. And you have these organizations like Amway or whatever that I don't know how to put this gently, are sort of fascinating anthropological studies in how humans grift one another. And the reason I'm bringing this up is one of the most common ways that MLM participants, so it's, they're essentially pyramid schemes that it's the greater fool theory. So you get recruited into it, then you try to recruit other people into it. And the last people to get recruited in are the ones that lose all the money. The way those people typically bill themselves, as I understand it these days, is they are coaches. So those people share your title if you get into it. There are also all kinds of people that are not in pyramid schemes that are doing some pretty low value stuff out there in the world in general, coaching you with, no expertise other than I had a couple of kids and now I am a parenting coach or something. You also see a lot of people who become coaches in the thing they fail to execute themselves. I talk about this on Dead Tech at times, which is, somebody goes freelance, they don't do very well at it. So what do right before going out and finding a job? They become a freelancer coach and they create info products and try to teach you how to be a freelancer because their freelancing dance card is completely empty and they don't have anything else to do. So anyway, I say this not to throw rocks at people, but to try to help you understand the gamut of people with whom you will share the title coach. So you need to be very careful about creating some brand differentiation with yourself versus people that are selling nutraceuticals and getting you into pyramid schemes and stuff, because that's very real. All of these people are calling themselves coaches. So there are a lot of people who are just contracting laborers that call themselves consultants. It's less common for just the hucksters of the world to call themselves consultants. I mean, maybe it happens, but I don't think quite as prevalently as coach. So beware of that. It's one reason that I would definitely not get into B2C coaching. And so if you were asking this question, should I get into coaching and should you coach, say, other software developers as a software developer as an indie? Only if it's a company that's paying you to come in and coach those developers. I would not do that one-to-one because, again, that starts to look like the sort of B2C hucksterism that is pretty rampant in coaching. Now, I want to be clear. I'm not saying that you couldn't stand up a B2C coaching practice and it'd be valuable and lucrative and have a good brand. It is possible to do that. What I am getting at is that you don't have a lot of margin for error if you establish yourself as a B2C coach. You will almost be subconsciously thought of by a lot of people as a huckster by default. And then you have to go into proving yourself otherwise. And I'll get into the prerequisites here in a moment, but this is why I say here be dragons. So number one, you are up against a whole lot of people that are tarnishing the brand of coaching. You might even want to consider calling yourself something else, even if you are doing this kind of coaching. So that's thing one. Thing two is there is the potential to create absolutely no value. So if you're consulting, or especially if you're delivering labor, those things are tangible outcome focused. So when I used to consult, for instance, organizations would bring me in to help get a program that was off track back on track, or get an over budget project back on the rails. There were measurable outcomes to be associated with that. So either the thing got back on budget or it didn't, either the project succeeded or it failed. So I could be, very much evaluated in terms of the advice I gave on that basis. If you are doing labor, like you're writing code, you can easily be evaluated on the basis of, did you deliver the features or what have you. So that type of work is meatier, it's more tangible. Even consulting, which can be a little less so than labor, you're still, if you're doing it right, you are helping clients achieve an outcome, and either the outcome happens or it doesn't. Coaching gets a little harder to define in that way because it sort of relies on the person hiring you to understand the outcome they want and the value that they're going to get out of it. So let's say that you help CEOs get more confidence in public speaking. Is that actually going to help that CEO do better in business? Is it going to help that company? Kind of hard to say. In the end, do you help them? Well, it's entirely self-reported. Does the CEO afterwards come and say, yes, now I feel more confident? You could say, oh, well, outcome delivered. That's true. But that's also subject to a lot of cognitive biases and like placebo effect. It might just be that the person who is the CEO hiring you really wants that money to be well spent. So they self-report as, yes, I am more confident. It could be a self-fulfilling prophecy. I won't go too far down this rabbit hole, but understand it can be a lot harder to trace the spend on a coach back to succeeding at the thing, let alone having the up-leveling of the skill set of that person to actually deliver a good economic outcome for the business. So it can be a pretty mushy space and it can be pretty hard to measure. I firmly believe that you can measure anything, so nothing's impossible, but it's tougher. So you have to be more sensitive to the fact that people might say, like, why should I hire you? And you might want something more compelling than like, well, I worked with the CEO who reported feeling more confident afterwards. So you might have more work to do in writing up your case studies and testimonials than in other kinds of indie work. All right, so should you do it? Maybe. I think there are some prerequisites here. So if you are just hanging out your shingle and you're like, I'm thinking of being a coach, I wouldn't do that. And the reason I say that is because a couple of the things I would recommend you have at your disposal. Number one, you should have a proven track record of success yourself in the thing that you're coaching people about. So if you are coaching CEOs on public speaking, you should probably be a pretty accomplished public speaker. Number two, you should also have some kind of track record of helping people get better at whatever it is. So not only should you be a good public speaker if you're going to help CEOs with public speaking, you should probably at some point have already done some work helping people in some capacity or another get better at public speaking and be able to point to some results. The place I think a lot of people fall down, the sort of like huckster B2C stuff that starts to go on, is somebody goes freelance, having trouble, selling freelance businesses. So they start a YouTube channel or something and position themselves as a freelancing expert and start coaching you about freelancing. So is there a proven track record of success as a freelancer? Nope, not at all. Do they have any kind of proven track record of helping freelancers be successful? No, of course not. You're showing up as the first one and hoping to succeed where they have personally failed twice. So you should if you're going to coach people at anything, you should be really good at that thing, and you should also be really good at helping other people be good at that thing. Some people might argue with me on being good at it yourself, citing like there are football coaches out there that were never much good at football, but they are good at making football teams good at football. So, sorry, that was a horrible sentence. Hopefully, you get the idea. And I think there's some merit to that. Your path there may be harder, especially in the business world. I've never been much good at this, but I know how to tell you to be good at it. If you can pull it off, I mean, credibly, I don't mean pull it off as in can trick people into believing it. If you can pull it off as in like get at bats and actually do it, then hey, yeah. Because that brings me to the third and final prerequisite I would have here, which is you should be able to tie, at least hypothesis wise, the nature of the coaching that you're doing to some kind of organizational value. So, for instance, if I think back to when I was subcontracting and doing this software craftsmanship coaching, it wasn't too far of a leap to say if the software developers adopt these XP principles, get better at continuous integration, test-driven development, they're creating more maintainable code that's easier to change, then the velocity of feature deployment, for instance, speeds up. Organization gets things to market faster. That's a good outcome. Versus if you're helping the CEO be more confident, you need a story there and a credible one. So is the organization currently suffering because every time the CEO gives a motivational speech to the organization, people quit? I mean, like I'm being a little flippant, but you need to look at what's going on there and think, can I make a business case that helping this person get better at this thing will ultimately be good for the organization? Now, if you're new to it and you're just starting out in it, you're obviously not going to have like a long history of case studies, but you should at least have a ROI hypothesis for this coaching that you're going to be doing. So again, to summarize, when should you do it? When should you consider coaching? In my opinion, you're very good at the thing. You have a proven track record of getting other people to be better at the thing, and you can tie improvement at the thing to some kind of ROI hypothesis. If all of those boxes are true, then I think, yeah, maybe you have a future in coaching. In my personal opinion, the people I would think would be best slated to do coaching are people who have had some kind of success exit from a venture. So you might be a good candidate for coaching if you have left an organization after managing and mentoring a team of software engineers successfully, or if you've done that again and again. That's a good case for coaching people in that capacity. If you have exited a business or two as a founder, then coaching other founders seems to make a lot of sense. So when you have bid a successful exit from some kind of thing, and you've taken time to sow your oats for a minute, and you say, what, that went well, I think I can help people recreate some of the success that I haven't had in this thing, then yeah, I think it's a good thing for you to do. So hopefully all of that makes sense. It is kind of fraught. Like there are a lot of hurdles to overcome. I will say on the upside, it is potentially one of the most lucrative, high leverage and high value things that an indie can do. But there are a lot of ways to faceplant in failure, hucksterism, and charlatanery if you're not careful about it. So it's kind of high risk, high reward, not for everybody, and you have to be pretty careful about how you execute and position yourself. So yeah, hopefully that makes sense, and I will catch all of you next time.